Are you ready to witness one of the most harrowing moments ever captured on camera? Deep in a deserted pine forest, where every rustle of wind seems to whisper long-buried secrets, two white officers drag a black woman from a parked SUV and snap rusted steel cuffs around her wrists. They cinch her to an ancient, cracked, tree-trunken, ugly reenactment of a modern-day lynching. The air, already thin at this altitude, grows thick with the acrid scent of dry dust and the metallic tang of old blood. Her black blouse is torn and stained. One collar lies ripped open, revealing a dark bruise left by a boot heel. But she does not scream. She does not beg. She simply breathes in ragged gasps, her eyes fixed on the sun-dappled canopy above, as though communicating with some unseen witness. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Liam Turner stands before her face, flushed, eyes bloodshot, sweat beading, not from exertion but from the twisted thrill of domination. He yanks the muddy rope, tearing splinters of bark from the tree, then cackles in triumph at her still, unmoving form. This isn't a story about a victim's agony, a silent war cry that shook an entire nation to its core. As the officers jeer and film every brutal detail, the question that echoes through your mind becomes clear. Who truly holds the rope end, who is about to be unmasked? Curious to see how this dreadful encounter ignites a reckoning none of them expected? Hit subscribe and ring that bell so you won't miss a single episode of our series, The Silent Rope. We're peeling back layers of deception, power abuse, and the raw, unspoken courage that rises when the world watches and can't look away. Share this video with everyone you know. Let them feel that same knot in the chest, that same burning curiosity to uncover the truth. Smash that like button if you believe justice should never be silenced, and drop a comment below. What would you do if you were there? Stay tuned because what happened next is more explosive than anyone could have imagined. Lieutenant Liam Turner's voice cut through the forest's tense silence like a whip. "Tell me who you are, some car thief or a scam artist crying for cash?" He spat the words, then kicked the tree so hard that a chunk of wood cracked and fell to the forest floor. Still, her eyes didn't waver. She remained motionless, as if the ropes had bound her body but not her resolve. Officer Owen, the younger backup, rifled through her bag, a dead cell phone, an empty wallet. "Nothing on her," he muttered, stepping closer, voice low and dismissive. "This type you know, those who think the victim card covers everything." They traded smirks as they tried to assign her a motive: fake ID, counterfeit money, manipulation. Every accusation was calibrated to force her to break one shouted question after another, each aimed at drawing out fear or anger. Yet she never answered. Blood continued to drip in tiny rhythmic splatters onto the tree's gnarled roots, mixing with the damp earth and rotting pine needles. That faint plop-plop filled the air, punctuating the interrogation like a grim metronome. Turner leaned in close, face inches from hers, the camera's red recording light glinting on his badge. Then, abruptly, he straightened, raised his voice, and clicked on his phone's video mode. "Look up," he commanded. "I want your face clear in this clip." She obeyed without hesitation, her gaze drifting up to the foliage overhead. In that silent exchange, something shifted. Turner's swagger faltered for a moment. Her unwavering eyes met his, unblinking and strangely luminous against the dappled sunlight. He swallowed hard, then resumed his acthous tone, measured, official. "Subject resisted when asked for ID," he narrated. "We had to restrain her to prevent escalation." But the practiced calm in his words clashed violently with the brutality of his actions. Throughout the ordeal, she never screamed, "Help!" She never pleaded for mercy. Her silence was her defiance. Each unspoken word echoed louder than any protest. It was a refusal to play the role they'd written for her. And as the camera whirred, capturing every detail of their cruelty and her composure, it became clear. This was not their story to control. Her quiet resistance would tell it instead, without a single word. As soon as Turner flips his chest camera back into standard protocol mode, he reconstructs the scene with surgical precision. Subject resisted, had to be restrained to prevent escalation. Every scream, every savage kick at the tree, every sick grin at the sight of her blood disappears. The forest clearing transforms into a sterile tableau and edited security tape, authored by Turner himself. Owen stands by silently, rifling through her empty wallet and dead phone, as if uncovering evidence of threat. Turner shifts the camera back onto the bound woman. His voice is icy. These injuries appear self-inflicted during her resistance. It's a calculated sleight of tongue, burying the real violence beneath a veneer of objectivity. Next, they pop open the trunk of their squad SUV and produce a faded inspection, placard another piece of proof that numbs their consciences. We've got all the paperwork we need. No ambulance arrives. No paramedic steps forward. Instead, these two professional officers perform a grotesque cover-up, rehearsed and precise, dressing a brutal assault in the trappings of due process. All around them, the pine forest sinks back into oppressive silence. The only sounds are the wind whispering through needles and the rustle of dying leaves, as if the woods themselves bear witness to atrocities hidden from view. The cracked bark at her back and the dark stain seeping into the soil serve as mute reminders that no amount of camera angles or scripted statements can erase the truth of what happened here. In that stillness, the forest holds its breathing, unblinking jury to the injustice these men desperately try to conceal. Back at the station, Lieutenant Vivian barely had time to set her file down when a sudden flash of recognition struck her. She'd seen that woman's face before. A conference photo from 3 years ago. Not an ordinary civilian, but a federal advisor who'd delivered a keynote on crisis response. Heart-pounding, Vivian accessed the internal records using an old Central Command override code. Instantly, a trail of internal complaints appeared: excessive emotional response, failure to log warning, and a recommendation for 6 months extended monitoring of Officer Turner. Meanwhile, a tech assistant approached, holding a USB drive. "I found this, thought you should know," he muttered. It contained a supposedly corrupted 19-second clip from Turner's body cam, preserved on a backup terminal. Vivian slid it into her laptop and pressed play. The grainy footage revealed Turner gripping the woman's hair, yanking her head back against the bark as she winced. Then his voice, low and cruel: "If you make it through the night, you're lucky." That whispered threat shattered any illusion of a routine detention. This was not mere brutality, hidden by paperwork. It was a calculated warning, echoing centuries of unchecked violence. Vivian realized the staged official report was nothing but a facade. Every shout, every kick, every twisted grin had been trimmed out, leaving only the sanitized version Turner wanted the world to see. Determined, Vivian chose not to confide in Turner or the corrupt chain of command. Instead, she quietly began tracing which federal agency the woman belonged to, discreetly contacting higher-ups who could verify her identity. Because if her instincts were right, this wasn't an isolated error, was the spark waiting to ignite a wave of outrage that could engulf the entire department. Alone in the flickering fluorescent light of the evidence room, Vivian dialed the number for the Federal Oversight Bureau. Her voice was steady but urgent. "I have evidence of sustained abuse and proof of a federal advisor under duress. This is going far beyond internal review." As she spoke, the station corridors fell silent, as if bracing for the storm about to break. Late that night, an anonymous account dropped a shaky, handheld clip from a balcony camera onto social media. The footage was raw: a black woman bound to a gnarled tree trunk, blood streaking down her forehead, 2 white officers filming her with callous amusement. No context, no sound, just the jarring visuals of cruelty in broad daylight. Within 4 hours, the video had been shared nearly 50,000 times. The hashtag number #WhoWasShe exploded across timelines, provoking outrage and grief in equal measure. "Is this America?" screamed one tweet. "Why didn't anyone stop it?" echoed another. Observers noted the dried blood, proof that the violence began long before the camera rolled, shattering any claim of necessary restraint. Human rights forums lit up with demands for answers. Mainstream news outlets that often looked the other way were forced to cover the story. By dawn, 3 major networks were airing the clip in their breaking news segments, replaying the frame of the woman's lifted chin and unwavering gaze. Local officials responded with a terse statement: "We are conducting an internal review." But in a flood of comments, people made clear they would not wait. Profile pictures across the country, shifted overnight to that single frame of defianture, head held high, her eyes meeting the lens. Strangers wrote, "I don't need to know her name to know this is wrong." The movement transcended politics, race, and geography. Without a single word from the woman herself, the image alone had galvanized millions to confront a reality they could no longer ignore. Social media became a digital vigil. Candle emojis, black squares, and reposts of the same frozen frame became the new symbols of solidarity. Grassroots organizers swiftly called for protests, sit-ins, and virtual teach-ins. City council members and state representatives scrambled to issue statements, knowing silence now equaled complicity. The leaked video had torn open a festering wound in the national conscience. In the age of instant sharing, one unfiltered moment of brutality was all it took to awaken a society long numb to invisible suffering. And as the morning light fell on millions of screens, the question that haunted every viewer was the same. Who was she, and what would happen to those who thought they could hold the rope forever? Just past midnight, the iron gates of the precinct groaned open without warning or wail of sirens. A matte black, armor-plated SUV glided through as if swallowed by the night. No lights, no announcement, only the hush of tires on asphalt. When its door finally swung open, out stepped Simone Brooks, Ivlas. She wore no gleaming badge or shining rank, insignia only, a single federal ID card, its anti-forgery seal catching the dim porch light like a promise. Her presence cracked the air. Officers froze mid-clipboard, cameras halted in mid-scan, and radios went quiet. In a voice colder than the mountain wind, Brooks declared, "I will not let silence be an excuse for violence." It was neither question nor request, but a verdict. Instantly, the station's entire infrastructure shuddered under federal authority. Internal databases began automatic backups, surveillance feeds redirected to Washington, and physical evidence logs locked into encrypted archives. Without a guard detail, she walked from the holding cell. Her wrists bore faint red crescents where the steel cuffs had dug in. Her once pristine white headscarf was streaked with dried blood. Yet she moved with calm authority, no handcuffs, no entourage, only the weight of her statement. The corridor lights blinked overhead, as if acknowledging a transfer of power. Behind her, officers exchanged nervous glances. Cameras resumed rolling, but no one dared obstruct her path. Phones tapped into secure lines. Every fingerprint reader and door lock responded to her silent command. In that charged stillness, the precinct ceased to be a local outpost and became a federal command center, its previous chain of command erased in a single, echoing sentence. Simone Brooks did not speak again. There was no grand manifesto, no spectacle of threats. Instead, her one line resonated through every unlocked file. "I will not let silence be an excuse for violence." From that moment, she was no longer merely the victim bound to a tree. She had become the living embodiment of justice itself, rewriting what it means to protect and to serve. Her brief intervention cracked open a cascade of investigations, policy shifts, and accountability measures that could never be unwritten. In the cold glow of fluorescent bulbs, the precinct stood transformed. Where once unchecked power reigned, now vigilance and transparency took root, seated by a single, unwavering refusal to remain silent. When the unedited 19-second clip, survivor testimony, and long-suppressed witness statements finally reached the Department of Justice, everything changed. Liam Turner found himself indicted on 7 counts, from torture under color of law to racial discrimination, abuse of authority, and obstruction of an official investigation. In the hushed grandeur of the federal courthouse, the trial commenced. Inside the gallery, hundreds gathered in person, while thousands more watched in solemn silence via live stream. Chants never rose to a roar. Instead, a collective stillness descended, broken only by the roll call of charges. On every screen, banners flickered. If she hadn't spoken, who would tell her story? And simply, we saw it. No one needed to know her, name her. Image alone spoke volumes. Over days of painstaking testimony, the prosecution wove together the raw footage of Brooks bound to a tree, the forensic reports confirming her injuries, and the archived records of Turner's past abuses. Survivors once dismissed for lack of evidence stepped forward, their voices finally heard. When the defense tried to recast Turner's actions as standard procedure, the jury saw through it. Every forced apology and feigned regret rang hollow against the damning reality of the tape. On sentencing day, the judge's gavel fell like a thunderclap. 30 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole or sentence reduction under any condition. It was the harshest penalty ever imposed for law enforcement perpetrated torture. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The live stream viewership peaked as the words "guilty" and "sentenced" echoed across speakers. Turner, shackled and defiant, leaned to the microphone and declared, "I did my duty." But instead of solidarity, his arrogance only fanned the flames of outrage. In that moment, citizens everywhere understood. Even when the legal system falters, justice can prevail if the voices once silenced rise together and bear witness without wavering. As the gavel fell silent, a new truth emerged. No badge or badge of power can eclipse a single, unyielding image, and the steadfast resolve of those who refuse to look away. Justice had, at last, been served. The haunting image of Simone Brooks standing silent beneath the tree ignited a grassroots wildfire under the hashtag number #BuySilence. Survivors of Liam Turner's abuses, students dragged from classrooms, nurses forced to the roadside, delivery drivers intimidated during stops, former cadets beaten in drills took to social media with a single rallying cry, "He touched me." I stayed silent. Today, I speak. With that simple phrase, they shared videos, photos, and first-hand accounts, exposing decades of unchecked misconduct. Civil rights attorneys, law students, and advocacy groups amplified these stories, demanding independent inquiries. No longer hidden in insufficient evidence loopholes, each revelation stacked pressure on law enforcement and legislators alike. In response, police academies across multiple states overhauled their curricula. Slides titled "Forceful Response" were scrapped in favor of scenario-based training that emphasizes de-escalation, empathetic communication, and conflict resolution without weapons. New statewide policies mandate regular, non-violent encounter certifications. Simultaneously, the civic tech startup Civic Trace launched an app enabling any witness to securely record incidents, upload raw footage, and trigger notifications to a neutral oversight panel. Corrupted or deleted body cam files once, a ready excuse now, automatically sync to off-site servers, ensuring every moment is preserved. Today, silence is no longer a sign of resignation but a clarion call. If you see injustice, you must speak. #BuySilence has transformed individual courage into collective accountability. Teachers prompt students to reflect on what remaining quiet truly means. Community forums host open mic nights where survivors' voices lead the conversation. Even local governments sponsor speak out clubs, teaching citizens how to document and report abuses safely. From state capitals to small towns, the mantra echoes, "Your silence can no longer protect wrongdoers." In this new era, silence is the spark that fuels reform, and every witness holds the power to redefine justice. In the Academy's lecture hall, a new mandatory module, "How to Treat an Unidentified Person," challenges each cohort to confront power and prejudice without ever naming Simone Brooks. Students break into small groups to analyze a stripped-down scenario: a handcuffed stranger, 2 officers, the silent forest. They debate appropriate responses, spotlighting choices that might de-escalate rather than dominate. Each orientation begins with a solemn ritual in the archives room. Cadets file past a simple wooden plaque inscribed with, "Do not erase a lesson just because it causes pain." One by one, they place a hand on its worn surface and read, in hushed tones, victims' testimonies, the federal court's 30-year sentence, and Officer Reyes's candid admission, "I did nothing, and I realize now that was wrong." The room hums with the weight of unspoken truths. Outside, the ancient black locust where Simone was bound stands transplanted at the training ground's edge. Its gnarled trunk still bears the faint crimson stain of dried blood. A ring of white stones circles its base. No sign or plaque disturbs its quiet presence. Recruits, local residents, even curious children come to stand in respectful silence, absorbing the gravity of what occurred. Without ceremony or fanfare, they leave each encounter asking themselves, "If I found someone bound and voiceless, what would I do?" These moments ripple through the community. Instructors report deeper engagement when cadets field test de-escalation techniques on role-play actors. Townspeople tell stories of stopping to catch their breath before walking on. Parents bring their children to the tree, offering no explanation, but trusting that the silent monument will spark a lifelong habit of vigilance and compassion. By embedding Simone's ordeal into everyday training and public space, yet never naming her, the institution transforms personal guilt into collective responsibility. The lesson endures not in textbooks, but in each person's unspoken promise, never again to let silence shield injustice. Through that journey, we learn that true strength does not come from loud cries but from the resolve to resist in silence. For sometimes a steadfast gaze and calm endurance constitute the most enduring testimony. The overarching message is that when you witness injustice, do not lose faith in what is right. Choose to stand up, bear witness, and recount your story, using silence as an indictment of cruelty. If I were in the protagonist's position, I would continue to give voice to forgotten victims, connect with communities to advocate for stronger laws, and intensify human rights education in classrooms and beyond. Will brutality and coercion end completely by 2050? Probably not, but every small change today lays the foundation for a fairer future. And if we remain persistent, hope remains, because transformation begins with the awareness of each individual.